that's fun.
All right, and I'm just gonna go straight into you and I because we're waiting until Chicago shows up and joins us. Hi, welcome to the show, everybody. We're just starting a little bit early, getting ahead of it. I'm trying to be more professional and on time by being early with some of these things. So, welcome to HAL SPARKS Radio Program Mega Worldwide.
I'm trying to be less phlegmy. I apologize in advance for my throat.
Well, you're failing miserably. Hold on.
The HAL SPARKS Radio Program Mega Worldwide.
I don't take that band.
No, it's pretty good. I wear even though I do the show at home, I have, and we don't wear. There's Chicago. Hey, what's happening, Chicago? Can you hear us? Okay.
I hear you guys. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Absolutely. Sounding beautiful.
Oh, and I hear you both today. Lovely.
Excellent. Now, what I'm going to do is go into the audio settings in here real quick.
Not paying.
A simmer, and I'm going to turn off all of the echo cancellation and noise gate stuff that happens on these things because that's apparently one of the wonky issues that occurs when I have multiple audio sources using the system we use, the VDO. That it tries to do you a lot of favors by having compression and all that kind of stuff on, and it not good. Don't do it all bad. Don't do it. So I'm going to try and do that. And welcome, everybody. Chat room, hop in here, would you? Share the show. Get us out there. We are far too awake this morning. That's because Chip got me up at 4.
Nice. What did Chip
4.
have to say at 4? Feed me?
Thump. He does this thing where he drops his like rather significant girth upon your arm or shoulder. And Chicago, are we getting started soon? I don't want to.
Oh, he does the flop?
Yeah, he goes up and kaboom, and just like falls on you.
I love the flop.
It's pretty great.
Our boys are not. They are still in their own room overnight.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the HAL SPARKS radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
HAL SPARKS, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
HAL SPARKS.
All right, let's do this.
Well, we have a ton of. This is one of those news fire hydrant weeks where basically, trying as much to cover for what they're actually doing behind the scenes, that is the sort of illegal, unconstitutional, and quite frankly ridiculous stuff that the Trump team is doing. I don't even know if it's part of the administration. I think it's really just his internal flunkies using the Republican ideal of smaller government to and this idea that Canada is going to become the 51st, second, and third state, because there's no way they become one state. Obviously, we'd have to divide them up into 3, and then we'd have 3 states that are used to having national health care. That'll work out for you, Republicans. Give that a shot. I'm for it. You know what? I'm coming out today as for Canada becoming the 51st, second, and third state. And while we're at it, Puerto Rico, hop on board. Let's do this. I think it's, I'm 55. We should get up to 55 states. I don't know if it's going to be, Trump would want it to be, I suppose, Gaza at this point because he's completely losing his mind. But the fire hose of news, the busted, I would call it the busted fire hydrant of news currently, is largely full of distractions. Wouldn't you say, Johnny Million? Welcome to the show. Good morning.
Also, the chat says my volume is low.
Oh, your volume is low? All right. Well, I will bring you up. Well, I can't. We can't have that.
You got to hear every single hack, cough, and sniff.
Yes, the pithy nuances of Johnny Million that you may not, get on his live stream, because I understand you do that with cotton up your nose. But
I do. I had to work late this week, so there was no stream. But I'll be back at it, good and whatever.
I believe you. So thank you for that. That's that way to put the work in.
Can you hear that?
So Oh, I heard it. Yeah. And it was crispy. We got all the notes. That was like, yeah. So there's a lot to cover this week. Obviously, the purpose of the opening salvo of the Trump administration's kind of bull in a china shop approach to every issue that they presented on the campaign trail, because Donald Trump promised everyone everything, that his strategy to push back on the fact that obviously egg prices are going up and no one is managing bird flu, and grocery prices in general haven't gone down. And even if gas and oil prices come down, that is not going to be reflected in the cost of goods and services, because largely the rise in goods and services that we saw was caused by a rise in employment under Joe Biden, a rise in wages under Joe Biden, because people had to get the workers, they had to offer them more. And then, of course, the shortening of or the elimination of certain supply chains. And when you move factories from another country back to the United States, it is neither a short process nor a cheap one. And if maybe one day the ROI on missing tariffs or the value of the money they get from the federal government for moving those factories back to the United States, like chip fabs, might pair off over time, but in the short term, they're going to be spending all of it just doing the work of creating the work in the first place. There are 9 chip fabs, at my count, being built in Arizona alone. There are 4 or 5 what Trump calls AI factories, which is just adorable. Yeah, I mean, what?
Wow. How do you build that?
That's where you take artificial stuff and whatever's left of intelligence, and you put it in a meat grinder, and somebody just is paid $5 an hour to crank it. So I honestly, no one knows. It's one of those things like interwebs. You know what I mean? It's like that. It maybe, I don't want to be boomerish about this, but it's more like, okay, rich dude, where you've never actually had to do any of your own. You never had to figure out why a piece of software isn't working on your laptop. You just hand it to somebody else, and they go yell at somebody else, and there are literally a chain of, in your life, a chain of 3 people that will be assigned to fixing whatever issue you have. When you live like that, I kind of don't want to hear you pretend to be a real American. If you haven't done, if you're under the age of, I would say, 65, and you haven't done some form of tech support for your parents or grandparents at some point, I don't want to hear from you. Whether it's Christmas, walking them through the new device that you gave them, like the speakerphone with a button that Steve Martin uses in LA Story. Take me off that speakerphone. It's just a modern day device. Dial mom. Beep boop beep boop beep boop beep boop. Domino's Pizza. No, thank you. Story. Right. Well, it's a Valentine's Day movie, so Summer and I watched it last night, so it's fresh on my mind. Well, it's good, and you listen to the Enya soundtrack. Yeah, it does. It's adorable. It's also, it's arguably him after doing Cyrano de Bergerac as Roxanne, he started out to do Tempest, Shakespeare's Tempest, and so it has elements of that where he's a weatherman who controls the weather, and the island that they're on is actually Los Angeles, which is its own kind of society. Don't get me started. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie, and of course, made me fall in love with Enya's Watermark, that album. And if you haven't,
Enya's Watermark, very nice.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Orinoco Flow, but the rest of the album, just a tearjerker. It lines up in my life right there with Tori Amos' Little Earthquakes. And in that era. Yeah. So, point being, is that if you haven't dealt with your own tech support in this era to some extent, or you haven't done it through, for a relative who's slightly older, I kind of don't want to hear that what anybody goes through. There's an entire group of people and it has nothing to do with a Washington bubble or a Hollywood bubble or New York Manhattan bubble or any of that kind of stuff. It has entirely to do with money. There's a class bubble to this, and the reality is it doesn't even apply to a lot of them. There's a lot of rich tech dudes now who can do this stuff. They understand this stuff. There's a generational thing where Bezos isn't particularly young compared to anybody else, right? He's maybe what is he, 60 something? 60 years old, 61, something like that. And, that used to be the line where you didn't know how anything worked, right? And now we're, there's a generation of people coming up, Gen Xers in particular, who we've gone through so many changes, technologically speaking, we get it. So when you have somebody kind of doing like George H.W. Bush discovering the laser scanner at the grocery store for the first time, or Trump trying to wrap his head around the word groceries, that alone, there's a bunch of reasons to go enough already with this dude. Like, anybody who's defending him or whatever because he's doing the right thing, I'm like, okay, if you couldn't find another Republican to do this, because apparently you guys are all in lockstep, why not? Why couldn't you find another Republican you could get elected who wasn't friends with Jeffrey Epstein for a quarter century, right? That's it. Why is that so hard? Why is that so impossible? And the reason is because I feel like watching this last week is that why is there a torrent of news? Why is there this broken fire hydrant? Besides the fact that he's got to look busy and show the sort of generalized maggots that he's doing something, because they're not seeing it in their lives and they're not going to. He's got to look like, I tried everything. I'm just making big moves, right? And big moves might take a little while to shake out. So you're riding on their patience nerve. Why are they doing it? Well, he's sitting there signing executive order after executive order as fast as he can every single day over the last work day, anyways, over the last 2 weeks in particular, 2.5 weeks. They've done this big display of somebody coming out with a stack of these, executive orders, and he's just signing them. And it's like he's autographing pages in Project 2025. All of this stuff is right out of Project 2025, just as we said it was. He's signing them, and the thing that sticks out to me, and we got to take a break, but the thing that sticks out to me, Johnny Million, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, if you've seen any of this stuff, is he keeps calling them bills.
He does?
Yeah. He keeps saying this bill will blah, blah, blah. This bill.
Opposite of bills.
They're not bills. Yeah, they're what you write when you can't get a bill passed, either for time or effort or desire or actual votes. These are executive orders. Call them that. But the question is, does he even know the difference? We'll take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Now with 100% more, Johnny Million. Sniffle, sniffle. So, I gotta say, I don't know if you've watched any of his little gaggles, but he is outsourcing all of his explanations. Like, this was a big one, huh?
While somebody else stands next to him and talks.
It really stands out. Like, somebody walks up and goes, this is an executive order to whatever, to get rid of woke in the military or something. And then he'll sign it, and then he'll go, Jay, you want to say something about this and stuff? And he just sits there with his hands while that person does a sales pitch that's half kissing his ass and half explaining what it actually is, that he's, why. And then he'll do some sort of anecdote from the campaign. It'll trigger muscle memory, and he'll recite a chunk of, like, well, we have insane asylums and people coming across our border and woke nonsense, whatever. And
60
then
seconds, gents.
Thank you. And then he goes right back to, like, and then they hand him another one. Okay, what else you got? Right, and then they just, like, he's a stamp jockey for the Federalist Society right now, and he's got to know it. That's the thing that stands out. Like, he's got to know it.
Yeah, it's a small price for him to pay to have that Diet Coke button.
Right. Yeah. And which, I could wire one in here, I guess, except I don't drink Diet Coke, and I can get my own stuff. I would never. Summer's the only other person in the house right now, so I wouldn't go, get me a beverage, woman. Like I couldn't even, the nerve. Right? That's the other thing. Maybe
10 seconds.
Thank you. There's an element of, like, we'll talk about it on the air.
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So one of the things that we're seeing, is a downturn in people showing up at the border. And Trump's policies are directly related to this. There is no question that the cruelty is the point, and that, beyond economic migrants, people trying to sneak in, cartels, all that conversation about taking jobs Americans apparently don't want to do or what have you, which is another thing entirely where, anybody who's ever mentioned an open border is really talking about like I think it's I'm going to mess up the name on this, the Becerra program in the 40s, where they would give kind of temporary worker status or seasonal worker status to Mexican immigrants who could come over and work on farms and agriculture and building sites, and then they would go back at the end of the season, that kind of stuff, which is really what, if you go back to what Hillary Clinton was talking about when they used her open border quote against her, which is like a secondary, like a clipped piece of from a speech or an interview or whatever, where she's talking, she's referring, thank you, a Bracero, thank you, chat room. By the way, infotainmentwars.com, YouTube, subscribe, help us get our numbers up. We're over 80K. We're heading towards 100K. I am absolutely diminished on all these sites because I speak frankly on my regular show. So I guarantee both my language and the topics I cover are not getting me boosted up into the top of, the kind of algorithm that promotes makeup tutorials. Although I might mix the two at some point. But she talked about an open border insofar as you talk about seasonal workers, so that people can live in Mexico. They don't have to move here or sneak here. They can come here, do the work that they're being paid to do. It benefits them, and then they can go back to Mexico where their family and their life and everybody is. And it's not, the border is porous for those people. So that's where a lot of that came from. And it is a necessity insofar as the agricultural output of the United States. And there are two elements right now where, food is not being harvested and it's rotting in warehouses because a mix of USAID moving product through to other places, and this is creating a situation where you've got a lot of wasted resources, quite frankly. Just because Trump needs to do this, I'm shutting the border entirely. Everyone is afraid of even trying to come over and get what would effectively be a necessary job in the United States because, and again, that's part of it's the point. The cruelty is the point. Never mind the fact that Stephen Miller and his ilk liked the idea of separating these families, liked the idea of being cruel and grotesque and racist. Stephen Miller's a very gross human being. But like John Bolton served Trump in that people thought Bolton was a warmonger and crazy. Trump will sometimes talk about that when he would bring him in the room, like, oh my God, if he's got John Bolton can't wait to bomb our country. And therefore, it would change the behavior of the people, because if this guy's whispering in his ear, kind of like, Kissinger, which is the old thing, Kissinger put the fear in a lot of countries because his thing was, if we do go in, we're there to stay. That was the thing that countries feared. Not that Kissinger would start a war, but that he would guarantee it never ended, was the fear that a lot of foreign ministers would have if he was in the room with Reagan or these other people. So that was his leverage that he brought. John Bolton brought the same kind of leverage because, he's never seen a country that he doesn't think can be, corrected through strategic shock and awe. Stephen Miller is that for immigration. And the rising number of people, never mind, obviously COVID, Title 42 set up this system at the border where if you were kicked out, it didn't go on your record. You were not found. Trump set this up with Title 42, that if you cross the border, you're just immediately ejected under Title 42. Under Title 8, if you're busted, they take your thumbprint and your iris scan, I suppose. In some places, they take all your information. And if you're caught coming back in, you do jail time. And you can never be a citizen if you try again. it's like a 5-year prison sentence, or or 5 to 20 years, and you can't enter the country even with a visa, even if you were going to college, nothing. And then if you try it again, it's a criminal proceeding. So under Title 42, you were never adjudicated, so you could never be found guilty of anything. They just punted you, so you could try again. So people would show up with $8,000, $10,000 and go, get me in right now. And again, the people that were coming during this period of time were not the poorest of the poor, your downtrodden, the people that are running away.
Masses, huh?
They were not huddled masses necessarily. They were the people who could afford to pay a coyote, $10,000, maybe twice, right? And if you got in, you could use the asylum standards of the United States, which were, which have been lax because the standards were softened because of a reflection on how badly they were used in World War II, for example, when Jews were trying to escape Germany and other places in the lead up. So we softened them for good reason. Road to hell being paved with good intentions would be the theory in this instance. But instead of dealing with the honest immigration reform and dealing with that standard, going, hey, we need people who are fearing for their lives, gang violence or political persecution or religious persecution coming in. Anybody could just go, I'm afraid for my life, and that was enough of a standard, and it didn't have to be true or provable or anything. So you get in, you claim that, and that was the strategy. And so the coyotes, the cartels could make a living out of this by creating this loop. Under Trump, there was this revolving door, and the cartels made billions of dollars off the revolving door that Trump set up under Title 42. People would go in, they'd get kicked out immediately. The cartels get to keep their $10,000. If they have more money, they'll give you another shot through, and they'll send you to another place if they're feeling magnanimous or something. But then if it costs you another $6,000, or you've got to carry drugs, or you've got to carry you've got to shepherd a child through, or those kind of things. And the third time, the price goes up, and the price goes up. And then you get, women being sexually assaulted and trafficked and those kind of things. And that system was set up by Trump under Title 42. It was built under Title 42 in a direct reflection of his policy that he could not get immigration reform passed through Congress. He couldn't get a bill passed, even though there were several bills, including the ones that the Democrats tried to pass, that would have passed. You bring it to the floor, it'll pass. They ultimately passed it. The Lake and Riley Act.
I'm sorry, I heard something about, hasn't he proposed the new tax bill that doesn't have any of the stuff that he said about in it, like the no taxes on overtime, the no taxes on tips?
Well, he wants his tax cuts made permanent. Right, that's a big part. He wants. That's why they're doing all this cutting. He's trying to do the idiocracy version of Dave. He wants to cut all these programs, USAID, Department of Education, all this stuff, so he can take that money and give it to. He can make permanent his tax cuts. Republicans in the House know that making those tax cuts permanent will drive the debt up, $5 to $7 trillion over the next 10 years, period. Yeah. And they've been screaming about it on the floor of the House, and none of them want to pass it. So they are trying to cut the government to the bone, or make it look like they are. Again, most of this, 40,000 employees, 75,000 employees cut or fired. They were paid out, so these people took early retirement. So they actually got more money than they would have gotten if they'd waited another year and a half, something like that. And they're not doing the work they were productively doing during that period of time. And it's 8 hours of federal borrowing for all of those workers. The cost of all those workers is 8 hours. If you spread out the debt of the U.S. government over a year, the $7 trillion budget of the U.S. government, 8 hours of it covers all those people fired. With the end of USAID and the Department of Education gone, you get effectively a week. All of their cuts, all in, everything they're doing is going to cut the federal budget like 2 weeks worth of borrowing. It'll have nowhere near the impact necessary to extend his tax cuts. But if he wants to add no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on, what was the other one? I don't know.
Overtime?
Yeah, overtime. If you want to, if you remove those, it makes it even, more unpalatable. So you're not going to be able to do it and do his tax cuts. And what do you think he's going to prioritize? People who work for tips or people who, like the billionaires and millionaires who've already benefited from his tax cuts, who are surrounding him and are literally having powwows at Mar-a-Lago and at the White House while he's having his Oval Office signing fests. He literally, at one of the dinners, he was like, the donors are upstairs meeting right now. Yeah, to tell you what to do. So the point I'm trying to make is that, like, he's, all this cutting, all this stuff is performative. And when it comes to the border, the performative nature of it is going to drive the numbers down, period, for a period of time anyways, because a zero tolerance policy will mean that people have to try something else. They have to go to Brazil, which has a big economy in South America, or they will have to thread through someplace else, or they will simply work in Mexico or something like that. Tariffs on Mexico make that even harder because it raises the cost of doing production in Mexico and therefore drives jobs down there. So you've got more people wandering around who are just going to try to sneak into the United States because that's their only recourse at some point. So it only lasts so long. But the goal of being cruel is not just in the United States. It's not just here. There are several countries that either through, because Russia and China have both weaponized migrants in a series of theaters all over the world, including South America, to intentionally drive those up. I would argue that there are also right-wing groups. We know we're putting ads in papers in South America during Obama and Biden saying, come to America, you can get in and you'll be allowed and you'll get welfare and all these kind of things. And they blamed it on NGOs that were somehow left-leaning when they were actually right-wingers trying to drive these caravans so that the president, so that Trump would have something to scare everybody with. Look, here come these caravans. Well, yeah, you guys handed out the leaflets for them. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. But the point overall is that Trump, there's a reasoning behind this stuff, and it's not him. He's enjoying it. It fits with his id, but he's not the person behind it. We'll be back. Did you know that like Elon Musk fathered another kid with like a MAGA influencer? Like this, I think how old is she? She's like 23, 24? 26. She's 26. Yeah. Obviously a trad wife Christian who just had a baby with Elon Musk. And again, like, I don't know how this happened.
Highest of morals.
Yeah. Well, again, that's more about like her, because I think she probably has, at least the illusion operating in the circle she is, that women have a specific place, that trad wife Christianity is the way to go, and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't care. His whole thing is, it's eugenics for thee, but not for me. It's like, like if you were ever looking for somebody who wants to lower the population of the world as a whole while growing the population of a race of people he believes to be superior, I mean, this is so on the nose, it's embarrassing.
We're back in 20.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you already do a whole play-by-play of that horrible Oval Office thing with Elon's kid?
Yes. Shut up, you're not the real president. Shut your mouth. Yeah. Amazing.
You're locked into the HAL Sparks radio program. Mega Worldwide.
So, it should come as no surprise that when your priority is tax cuts for yourself and your buddies and the people that helped you get elected by spending a lot of money on you, once you get in and it's you're effectively a lame duck as a president, because that the idea floating around DC right now seemingly is that Trump, either because they believe he's going to croak, or they're just trying to like get all this done before he loses interest and screws it up by saying something genuinely horrible. Or, and people actually react again, and then he starts, he screws up another pandemic or something, which, again, you could argue with avian flu, they already are. That in that process, they're just kind of bum rushing through all of these bills before he collapses or passes out or goes into a coma or becomes, Admiral Pike. But there are Republican states, there are red states that are relying on government aid, not just the billions of dollars of hurricane relief stuff that are going to North Carolina, southern Georgia, and all these places. There's like, what is it? Georgia had $5.5 billion worth of damage to its agricultural sector, and the farmers there and the industry around there has been just devastated in areas by it. And Biden rushed in and said, we're going to be with you the whole time. And he provided this funding or whatever. Well, what did Trump do? He came in and put a pause on everything. I got news for you. If you're Elon Musk, you don't care if social services pause for anybody or disaster relief, because you can pay for most of this stuff in cash. As a matter of fact, you're sitting on enough cash that you could buy up people's lives when they're devastated like this. You can buy the dip in human suffering if you're in his position. But when it comes to, these folks, they can't wait, and time is of the essence. I mean, we look at, during Bush and Katrina, remember the black mold that was setting in on all these trailers that people were living in because they weren't moving fast enough to deal with this, because there were the Rand Pauls of the world, and Ron Paul's father and everybody else who were like, we need to start teaching these states an important lesson about bootstrapping. So these people just need to suffer or move. Right? That was the story they were selling. Well, again, this isn't the only aid that these states rely on.
It's the same thing with the families that they're tearing apart. Your family wouldn't get torn apart if you didn't try crossing the border the way you did.
Right. Yes. They justify.
That's how they rationalize it with them.
Yeah. Your kid wouldn't be tormented if you didn't bring them with you, and this is your fault for doing this, right? And again, as a PR stunt, it's working. The end result, though, is that, and Texas is finding this out, so is Arizona, and so will all the MAGA states, that they didn't realize how much they rely on this under-the-table economy that's provided for by these things. And the biggest obvious, it's so on the nose. So the Trump Act that was passed in Florida, that Ron DeSantis is all mad about, and probably rightly so, because he saw what it was for what it was, as awful as what his plan is, and he wants to carry out what Trump wants to do in Florida. They want to find a way to broom the Cubans out of Florida. Ultimately, no matter what anybody says, this Latino culture in Florida has been allowed to flourish too long, and the combination of Cubans and Spanish-speaking people basically ringing the dinner bell for Spanish-speaking migrants from Mexico and South America making their way here, and the parallels between these two societies and kind of shrugging it off, even though under normal circumstances they'd be at each other's throats in some cases. It's easy enough, they just plan on grouping them together and hoping to throw the baby out with the bathwater, the one dry foot wet foot group. They want to redo all that. They want a redux of that whole thing. So that's what DeSantis wants. But the reality is that orange growers in Florida, which the state is known for amongst other crops, need those folks to pick the fruit. They need those folks to process all that. And it is on a commodity level that is such a high dollar amount that the Republican legislature in Florida put together this bill to shift control over the coordination of ICE in the state to the agricultural commissioner. So he basically go bust that guy's store because I don't care, but stay out of the fields. is essentially what they're doing. And it's so on the nose. The irony that Ron DeSantis has probably drawn more attention to this than anybody else and is not doing himself any favors in the Trump White House in this regard, even as he sucks up to him, because this is the unspoken, this is the secret they all are trying to avoid. That's what all these, like, having Homan going around with Dr. Phil, knocking on doors, picking up single individuals, which is what always happens, in big cities. Like, it's to make up for the fact that they aren't doing this giant mass deportation, because they can't. Because even Trump, in his sponge-headed delusion, is aware of where the potatoes for his French fries come from, and the oranges for the orange juice in McDonald's little peel-off cups that he likes on his airplane. He knows where that comes from. And so do, by the way, everybody in the Florida legislature, all of whom would consider themselves dyed-in-the-wool maggots. All of them would consider themselves, super Christian, Republican conservatives. But at the same time, whisper campaign about, like, well, let's just keep them away from, we don't want them to, we don't need them to get those guys just yet. And we'll do that in a couple of years. Then maybe we can, as we're going into the next economy, or the economy of the next administration, we can crash things by deporting those people last. We'll do that part last. So in the last year of the presidency, then we can go, we need to automate all these things. Isn't it lucky we have Elon Musk here with his robots? Right? While they're talking about getting rid of people who do the jobs Americans don't want to do, you got a guy whispering in Trump's ear who wants to chip the brains of 2 billion people. That's his number, not mine. And is creating robots, even though they're 4 gens behind the sort of top of the line currently. They'll be enough in some cases to pick fruit or do basic yard work and that kind of stuff eventually, right? And he wants to be there to scoop up that work. Well, nobody's going to do it. This is like gas cars versus electric cars. Electric cars do better when gas prices are high, because people start recognizing, well, not only can I help the environment, but I can also save money. I'm not willing to help the environment unless I can save some money. So, unless there's an incentive, I won't necessarily go that way. Well, if there's cheap and available labor, making the move to automation, making the move towards robotics in these situations is going to be a difficult sale, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
the chat says my volume is still off.
I brought it up, and then it popped back. I don't understand why that would be. And I see it on your end, so I'll do it. I'll fix it on my end. But
all right.
The point I'm obviously trying to make is that Musk's plan, Trump is just a coffee filter for what Trump and Peter Thiel and the industrialist class are recognizing. Like, if I just didn't have these environmental regulations, if I didn't have all these, little, building construction codes that annoy me, I could just slap up a lot more buildings and dig a lot more wells, and he can do a big steel tariff on Chinese steel, but he can give me a pass because I need extra steel for my mine shafts.
Everyone thinks they're going to be the exception.
Right. And look, in these cases, they probably are right, because it is the very nature of crony capitalism to throw your buddies a bone in this situation, which is why he is prioritizing making his tax cuts permanent over the no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and no tax on overtime. That's going to have to be punted to the next budgetary cycle. The new budget that they're trying to get through in a CR or try to actually get passed, they don't have enough votes in the House to pass all the cuts that they want to do. They just don't have it. And you know why they don't have enough votes? And this is probably the most beautiful thing. And nothing sums up the reality of Republican legislating more than this, I think, besides just Marjorie Taylor Greene showing pictures of Hunter Biden's crank to the public in general, in a committee, is that the reason in this narrow margin in the House, the reason they don't have the votes is not because they're not going to get all the Democratic votes, period. If they try to do all the cuts they want, they're going to lose Democrats, period. Like the Democrats are lockstep in the House and in the Senate at stopping the kind of massive cuts they're talking about. They don't want to shut down the government, but this is their leverage. The problem is that they have a group of people in their own party that's more than 20 in the House that want the cuts to be more drastic, so much so that the deal the Republicans like Mike Johnson can make with the Democrats will be more fiscally responsible and have continuity of government that won't crash the economy than making a deal with the 20 Republicans that are holdouts that will lose those votes. And those guys are the hardcore maggots, and they're the ones throwing the biggest fit. And Trump has to sign that budget, whether it's in two parts or in one part. That's what they're up against, because there is no mandate. There is no mandate, not in the House, not in the Senate, and not in the White House. Any basketball game you ever watched that was 78-75, you're like, that was a squeaker, 1 3-pointer. You wouldn't say it was oh man, they got trounced, right? Like like Kansas City in the Super Bowl, ouch, right? That was a trouncing, I would argue. 78-75 ain't, right? Especially with a lower turnout than previous. So let's take a break. We'll be back right after this. And Johnny, check your audio for me. Let's see if I can say hi. I don't hear you at all now. You muted yourself. We'll be back right after this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a coughing fit.
You big, like I'm trying to set the audio, and
That's
you're like,
me.
Always.
Short break. We're back in 20.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, goodness.
Always and forever. I'm trying to get this through that to people that Democrats need to be noisy about some things, but they gotta play their cards close to their chest right now and let these guys fail. Aww.
Welcome back to the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back. Don't forget to, by the way, check out my Substack, the HAL Sparks Substack, Mega Worldwide. I did a paper I wrote a couple of blogs this week about it. I was very proud of myself. They're like actually sitting down and crafting these things, because there are some things I talk about on the show that we know if you watch the live stream that I do regularly at Infotainment Wars or twitch.tv/HalSparks or on the Facebook page or wherever you consume news. I hear a kitty purring.
Oh, yeah.
That's adorable. That if you watch the show, I talk about a thing called the stroke of the pen fallacy. And it's a phrase of my own concoction. It is a real problem in modern politics. The Democrats, when we fall for it, it's particular. I got to say, that's very soothing as a noise. It's lovely. It makes me feel a lot better about all this. I think it might be necessary to just have a low rumble cow, like a cat purr going on.
Makes a lot of difference.
Right. So it's lovely. So I've been talking about this for a bit because people like TYT and others have been selling this idea that if only Democrats did this one thing, it would fix this thing. Or if they just did this, or go down swinging, or the president could, with the stroke of a pen, just sign this bill that hasn't been passed through the House or the Senate and can't get passed through the House or the Senate. If he could just sign this, it would all make it better, right? And in some cases, when that happened, for example, DACA, what it created was a situation where the DACA recipients, instead of actually the legislature having to deal with the immediacy of the issue and passing something, the president did it with an executive order under duress because he was running out of time. And what happened? DACA recipients have been whipsawed back and forth in their rights, every administration since, because it has to be something that has to be done through Congress. And it's a bit like the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that if you didn't guarantee the rights of gay and lesbian members of the community to serve openly, then if you did it with an executive order, just get rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell with an executive order, anybody who came out risked, when the next president came in, if he just scratched that off, now you're out. You don't have a choice. They know you're gay. So now you can't go back in the closet after that. You can't retreat to the closet in that circumstance. You're out. So you will lose your job and your pension and your life. And so there are things that have to be done through the legislative process, even if you need to hammer on them for more than one cycle. The problem is this stroke of the pen fallacy, which has afflicted Democrats for a long time on a bunch of issues, undermine it. There are only two responses that you can have to the stroke of the pen fallacy. When you believe this about someone, that they could just fix this with the stroke of a pen. If you believe that about that person, if they don't do it, there's only two things you can take away. One, they're stupid. They don't know. They need you to yell at them because they obviously don't know. And if you've yelled at them long enough, then they're obviously not stupid. The second option is they're evil. They actually don't want to help. They're not signing this piece of paper on purpose because they want people to be harmed. They're actually evil. This is the only fork in that road. There is no third option, because the third option is, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can't fix this with the stroke of a pen. And nobody does that. Nobody has that. Nobody walks back and goes, oh, damn, right. Okay. Yeah. If they did this, then it could be you basically are lashing someone's, putting someone's leg in a snare for the next president or the next administration or the next time their rights come up for a vote. And you could argue that in some ways, Roe v. Wade was a version of that. The SCOTUS did it with the stroke of a pen and kept it on this kind of watery footing for a long time, when it should have been handled by the legislature. The guarantee of a woman's right to choose and bodily autonomy was crucial. But again, that takes work, takes a lot of time. And in certain emergencies, people are like, well, better to solve the emergency right now, and then we'll eventually get to it. And then they never do. So the stroke of the pen fallacy has undermined a lot of stuff. We could just put in a public option and it'll just pass and people will love it. No. Like, that wasn't the case. Didn't turn out to be the case. And the votes didn't exist. But people would blame Obama and Biden, for example, for there not being a public option because they didn't fight for something that was never going to happen, right? Because they could have just added it. Like, they could have got the bill and go, oh, P.S., I'm going to add this thing to it. Doesn't work that way. Never did. Trump is in that boat right now. And he climbed in on his own. The Democrats have dealt with this issue because it's an illusion in the minds of voters, especially in the slacktivist class, the online activist crowd, who will tweet a big game and they'll march a lot, but they're not there election after election after election showing up, going, hey, I supported you in the last 3 elections. We're moving in the right direction. Keep it up. They just bail after every other election. If they whipsaw all over the place and they're unreliable. Republicans know they're unreliable and don't have to worry about them. And I have to fear this Democrat. Their own people are attacking them for not doing enough. All I got to do is stonewall them, and their own voters will turn on them. And by the way, that's a strategy that has worked. But Trump climbed into the stroke of the pen fallacy boat himself, and now that's why he's signing all these executive orders, to create the illusion that he's solving these things with the stroke of a pen. The role of Democrats, I would argue, then, is to, as these things don't get solved by a stroke of the pen, to remind everyone that has got to be the point. Like, hey, I don't know what you're worried about. He signed an executive order, right? It should magically be fixed. I signed a Egg Protection Act that he calls it, or whatever it is. I lower the price of eggs executive order. Didn't happen. Not going to happen. And that's Democrats' job right now. And that any problem that exists, I would argue, because Trump has promised everyone everything, Democrats have a rule, like, we are going to protect our constituents in our states and do the best we can for our constituents or whatever. But if there's a problem that's not solved, that you voted for, that's on him. I thought he took care of it. Didn't he sign something Wednesday that fixed this? I don't know.
Right,
we'll just watch our watch and watch it get fixed. Doesn't mean Democrats have to stop doing what they're doing in committee. Doesn't mean they don't offer bills. Doesn't mean they're obviously all in the budgetary committees. They're all doing that kind of work. But since he has claimed the stroke of the pen fallacy as a reality for himself, then the Democrats have a responsibility to pretend he has the magic pen.
I've seen a question here from Berkeley Dowd, and I've also seen this on Blue Sky. And this is attributed to Terry Dublin. Do you agree that the Dems should hold a post-press conference every day following the Trump presser?
Okay. Because I basically do that every day. Yeah. No, look, I do think there should be a regular announcement thing, strategy, what Democrats did today. And there's a couple of accounts online that do that. The DNC just got its own, its new leadership. So one of the things they could absolutely do is, because all political parties have done this for years, which is do their talking points, sending out their emails, all that kind of stuff. Putting one person in charge of that as the spokesperson on the regular, it should be the Speaker of the House or the office of the Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
And that's what Hakeem Jeffries has kind of been doing. But he also has to actually do the job, not just talk the job. So there's a lot of stuff they do all day long. Just like Trump is busy signing executive orders, Democrats are in committee, they're filing bills, they're studying law, they're doing all these, they're putting together bills to confront these things. They're using, their staffs are gathering to create strategies to push back against stuff they know is coming from Trump because he's announced that he's going to do certain things. I'll give you an example. The tariffs. So Trump has said the Canadian and Mexican tariffs aren't going to happen. They're going to be delayed for his 30-day thing, and then he'll go, they did enough and they're doing great, and we'll punt them for 90 days or something like that, and we'll see how they do. Right? He'll just keep punting that. And so it was always a veiled threat. It was always an illusion, and it'll just keep happening like that. And the market will factor that in. But the rest of his tariffs that his team is supposedly putting together, there will be more on China, period, because the hawks around him, including Marco Rubio, are pushing for these kind of things. There will be more tariffs on Europe because he's said it, so he has to on some things. And they will go into effect on the 2nd of April, Wednesday the 2nd. After that happens, it will probably be a few weeks or a month before the cost starts to go up for the American consumer in whatever areas. In some instances, the cost of a house being built is going to go up. In some instances, cars will get more expensive. A part for your car is going to be a big part of that because people have foreign cars, or even if they were made in the United States, elements of them might have been made elsewhere. So you have a Mercedes or something like that, but it was or a Toyota that was made in a factory here in the United States, but some of the parts come from overseas. So now that part gets way more expensive. That effect is going to roll into the summer and start to snowball. That's the problem with abstract blanket tariffs. Those go into effect on the 2nd. What Democrats need to do is, in the lead up to that, because nobody knows what he's actually going to do. Like the Canadian and Mexican tariffs were a bluff, right? It was all for show. People yelled in his ear on his side of the aisle and said, "Draw these back. You're going to kill us." And he said, "Oh, they gave us troops," and just pretended that the bill that Canada passed in December was just brand new, right? The one that they literally signed into law when Biden was still president was because Trump threatened them with a tariff that happened 3 months later. So it's bluster. It's a story. But there's going to be a period where he's got to put up or shut up. And Democrats have to, in those instances, that whole "I did that" thing that they did with Biden and gas prices and the like. Democrats need to pull stuff like that around grocery prices, around insurance. Everything he promised that would come down in 24 hours, super easy. The minute it doesn't, they need to draw attention to it. Because there are two things that will happen. One is people will recognize he was talking out of his butt the whole time. And secondly, if and when the prices come down because of stuff that's happening in Congress or just the overall cost of stuff coming down as a transition happened, like, chip fabs being built here, DRAM prices going down because they're being made here, having nothing to do with his tariffs, Democrats will be able to draw a line from, we told you, we showed you, we're working hard, and we'll bring those prices down for you. Because they're going up because of him, they're going to come down because of us. And that's got to be the strategy going forward. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Philip Ittner is joining us from Kyiv. And I want to ask him about the J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth cage match that's going on in policy. We'll be back.
All right, I need to scoop. Damon left us a gift.
Aw, that's adorable.
I'll be back.
Okay, cool. Let me go in here. Let's see. I'm going to go to... there we go. I'm going to put this in here and grab Phil. Hey, Phil. Can you hear me okay? Can you can hear everybody okay?
I can hear you, and I heard.
Great, yeah. You heard Johnny?
I heard Johnny earlier.
Okay, cool.
About his cat gift.
Wafting, and we're wafting, and we're wafting. Okay, there we go. So, there we go.
The HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So, yeah. Thank you for that, Cosmic Rose. Yeah, follow Philip on Blue Sky. And check out On the Edge, everybody.
Still, unfortunately, on Twitter. Yeah.
You bastard. Okay.
I know, I should get off of it.
Yeah, so like there's something happening behind the scenes with JD Vance and I would argue the Peter Thiel wing about that's more pro-Ukraine than the Elon Musk whisper campaign into Trump's ear, whatever the fuck that is. Because Hegseth and Vance are, I mean, it might be, the defense I've heard is it's a two-pronged approach. That one is good cop, bad cop. But it doesn't sound like that from the remarks. It sounds like Vance is giving actual, like, Pete Hegseth is just talking like as the defense sec. He's under the VP. They're like, if
he's
something happens to Trump.
Also take into consideration he's an idiot. I mean, like,
Hegseth?
genuinely
Yes.
an idiot.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
I mean, like, he's a moron. I mean,
Yes.
I know guys like that. And I know some people who know him peripherally from when I used to work at Fox. But they, especially at Fox, they promote guys like that because he's an idiot. They want somebody that isn't going to push back on them. Management at Fox.
Sure.
So
right. Hold that
he's
until
a straight up moron.
Yeah, hold that until we get on the air too. But I just wanted to give you that heads up that I want to talk about that in particular. And then this is not on what I will say about what Hegseth says. Thank you. What Hegseth says versus what Vance is saying. Hegseth's stuff seems a lot more off the cuff and like his understanding, which goes to your point about him being stupid. And Vance's stuff are prepared remarks. So give us 1 second. We'll be up. And
Hey, Phil.
Hey, Johnny.
We're coming back in a couple minutes or a couple seconds. Chat room, hit that like, share the show. By the way, yeah, I saw that the master Vance is a real idiot. Listen to what he said about the EU. I know what he's talking about. Like, again, this is
Stand by.
that's a whole. Thank you. That's a whole separate
He's not
thing.
much better than Hexeth.
No. But again, these are prepared remarks.
Yeah.
You're listening to the HAL SPARKS radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at HalSparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Fuss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back, and joining me from Kyiv right now in Ukraine is our dear friend Philip Ittner, and Johnny Millions rejoined us from the cat
The
moment.
Explosion 2025.
Explosion. Yeah. Understood. So a couple of things to cover here right now. One of the big fears, Phil, and I think it's a reasonable concern, was that Trump, in all of his sort of anti-Ukraine, pro-Russia leanings during the campaign and on a personal level, because it seemed very personal, made everybody in Ukraine think, okay, we have reason to be concerned that Trump is going to cut aid or undermine us or worse, actively support Russia's efforts inside Ukraine. That is really the biggest concern, was that not really that he was just going to just cut funding, but that he was literally on Putin's side in this exchange. Now, we obviously know he's a power suck up, and he hates to be associated with a loser and those kind of things. So that plays a part in his sort of ego response to this stuff. But whether it's him or the people he's made agreements with, or whether it's because he's being blackmailed with a PP tape or whatever, the concern was he's going to actively help Russia get what it wants in this circumstance. That feeling has dwindled a little bit. Not a lot, but a little.
Not for me.
Well, right. But I'm only
for
because
me at all.
They didn't come in and just cut Ukraine aid and go, I'm making my point about this. They cut aid for everything. And that's a weird way to cover the fact that you're just doing something that you promised your own supporters that you were going to do. And then we had this thing where Hegseth came out, and he was over there, right? As was Besant is in Ukraine, I believe right now, or I don't know if he's back yet, but he was there.
Oh, I think he left. He must have left by now.
Yeah. Okay. Because they were, for those that don't know, he was there to make a deal, quote unquote, that America would have access to the rare earth minerals, like first dibs, because of all the aid that we've given to Ukraine. In exchange for either continued support or the support we've already done. Now, one would think that if you're just 100% in Russia's pocket, you wouldn't have to make that deal. You would just give them that area, make that deal with Russia, and Russia would just hand it over, like as a favor to Trump. But that ain't flying, apparently, with anybody, insofar as we can see. And so Besant was over there signing an actual deal. Now, a deal negotiated by the Biden administration, I would like to say, for the record, because that was already in the works last year. I'm just curious how Musk and Hegseth's remarks, Hegseth being a little more like NATO ascension is out of the question, and American military support is, we're over it, sort of, and then Vance saying out there saying that if Russia doesn't come to the table and make a real deal, there are economic and military responses availed to the United States, which is, and again, these are prepared remarks. This is the two things that about these guys. I know I agree, but it's curious to me that Hegseth comes out and he has a meeting with, NATO leaders and the like, and he's doing a flap. He just talks to the press or whatever, and his stuff seems very off the cuff. But the remarks, including the speech that Vance did, that everybody's mad at him about basically seemingly supporting the Romanian government that was ousted because of the election, and the AFP probably, the little wink and the nod to that. Those are prepared remarks. He came from the White House with those in hand, right? you deliver these remarks on our behalf. Whether Trump worked on them with him, I doubt, but it was a matter of the administration's attitude. So too are those remarks in terms of the Wall Street Journal interview and his further remarks about support for Ukraine that he said out loud. These were in teleprompter. Distinctly different from Hegseth going, I don't know if it even makes sense. Who do we take more seriously, and who are the Ukrainians taking more seriously, if at all? Are they just in a wait and see?
Well, I think Ukrainians, like most Europeans, are recognizing that what Trump really wants to do is break the transatlantic alliance, and he's definitely headed in that direction. He is sowing the seeds for that. I mean, as you point out, Vance's statements were written, and they were prepared. And they had to know the reaction that was going to get. If they don't, then we have another whole set of problems in that they're disconnected. But to say things like, it's your own domestic policies in Europe that's the real threat to your future, as opposed to Russia or China, and that wokeism is your. I mean, it's just it was almost clearly designed to drive a wedge. And so I think a lot of Ukrainians are looking at that, and they're thinking about finding better partners on the continent, and also in return providing aid to. I mean, if America is indeed going to withdraw from Europe, what better fighting force to take its place? It wouldn't be the same in size, in terms of scale and size, but. Ukraine has the best fighting force in the world right now. Even American generals are openly saying the Ukrainians are better because they're battle tested.
Yep.
So Ukraine could fill that vacuum if Trump does, pull us or withdraw, massive numbers from the continent. Or there's a strategic sleight of hand that also could be happening here in regard to that, where the United States sort of teed up a situation where Russia basically it spent all of its ammo effectively and a lot of its manpower fighting in Ukraine, and now the European NATO groups by themselves do have enough military might amongst themselves to handle this in a way that they might not have been able to had the U.S. not, fronted the beginning of this. That now they can pick up where America leaves off. And if the agreement had been in the early days of this that, America's only got the resources to get you through 2 years of this, then Europe will have to pick up if it goes any longer than that. If that had been a written agreement, that's how it is working out in some ways. And part of that is, again, like you said, Ukraine joining in with what effectively is the NATO forces, whether it's, let's just say they become the military supplier. You've talked about this a couple of times where, they are going to become, whether it's drones or whether it's intel or satellites or those kind of things, they are a technologically advanced society. They have been on a war footing because of Russia invading, and they've got the skills to develop a military contractor base as far as development of weapons and an industrial base to do it that could sell to Europe. And even if they're not in NATO, NATO would rely on them for the gear. So they become a de facto member. You can't let your, if you're a retailer, you can't let your wholesaler burn down. And so in this particular instance, if you need Ukraine for drones, satellite, materials, weapons, ammunition, whatever it is, modern, armaments, isn't that as good as being in NATO almost for them? Well, I mean, there's also a lot of talk on the continent about a European defense alliance that would, in essence, take over as America withdraws.
Yeah.
What is NATO if America isn't in it? I mean, the Canadians for sure, absolutely. Great to have you with us. But is that a North Atlantic? I mean, by definition, I suppose it is, but it's, take that major part of the alliance out in the form of the United States, and you're going to have to find another way to do it. And I think there's there's increasing talk in Europe of if Trump is hell-bent And if there is also a supporting momentum within American security and politics that they want to withdraw from Europe, then okay, if that's the way it's going to go, then it's a bit of a wake-up call for the Europeans, which a lot of critics say was long overdue.
Sure.
I'm not of that mind. I think we are stronger when we're together.
Agreed.
And I think the Europeans have kind of sat on their backsides and let America do the heavy lifting for a very, very long time, and it's overdue that they recognize that their security should not be reliant on America. But those two mentalities can coexist. This conference that I've seen. How many Munich conferences have I covered? I've never attended one, but I've covered over 20 easily, between 20 and 30 of these things.
Right.
This was bad. This was really, really bad. This was about the worst I've ever seen it in terms of infighting. There's been infighting before. I mean, they fought. There was fighting over what to do with Kosovo, what to do with Bosnia, but nothing compared to this. I think that we should be deeply concerned about the fact that Hegseth's comments were kind of off the cuff, a little slapdash, and he had to walk them back and all the rest of it. But I think he was sincere in what he said. He just may not. He may have said it too early. He may have said it off the cuff and didn't think it out. And maybe he should have kept his powder dry, sort of thing. But I think there is a very strong movement within the Trump administration of we're not getting enough back because everything's transactional. We're not getting enough back from the Europeans. Well, that's not what NATO's about. It's not a protection racket. And they don't get that. And in addition to that, Trump legitimizing Putin, who, the West has tried to isolate him, rightfully so, because of his war crimes and the fact that he's the aggressor in this war, just by picking up the phone and calling Putin. Now, a lot of people cheered it. I do not. That is legitimizing a war criminal and further isolating Russia. We are not going to come to a peace by normalizing Vladimir Putin. That's the wrong thing to do. And of course, I come from a perspective of living amongst Ukrainians. So, this is not a good start for a Trump foreign policy event, and it has me deeply concerned. It really does have me deeply, deeply concerned about just how, and I'll choose my words carefully here, but how much this issue of Trump and his associations with the Russians are.
Yeah, again, the depth of it, and that is the wild card in all of this. Like, how much is he willing to give away? And the illusion that he is somehow America first is always the thing that's questioned, because they throw around the Russia thing quite often. But I think the phrase that our side needs to start using to draw attention to this very thing is Russia first. He seems to have a Russia first mentality. And I think it will resonate with people even amongst his ilk, because he's always running to the defense of Vladimir Putin to a curious level, and it's hard to shake even if you're a fan. And if you defend it, you're defending it. So that hashtag Russia first, I suppose, for Trump. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. And, of course, check out On the Edge, Philip Ittner's talk show. Hi, Murph. What's up, buddy? You want to go in there? You're going to have to open the door. Yeah. You can get it. There you go. Go ahead. Can you get in there? Murphy the cat is getting into the closet. Hi, buddy.
Yay.
Yeah, you okay? What are you doing, Murph? It's okay. He just came in, opened the door, and went, fuck it. Left. I don't feel like it today. I don't know. I don't know why I'm afraid of being myself, letting my freak flag fly.
Back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're locked into the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So there is obviously a lot of moving parts to everything right now, and it is hard to get a real bead on things. And I think that's what makes people the most uneasy, is the lack of stability. Everybody likes the devil they know in certain circumstances. And the issue with Trump's, quote, unpredictability in these circumstances has a lot to do with the fact that it's not really clear what he actually wants, even from what he says. And that mix of policy, it might just be that he wants to be seen as something. And that in and of itself may be the entirety of his focus in this. He wants to be seen as a peacemaker. He keeps using the word, I want peace and I want to make peace. And I mean, it's got all the makings of, again, he's the Timu Antichrist, this idea of like declaring yourself the peacemaker and declaring yourself God and then going and visiting the Temple Mount after you've driven everybody out of the West Bank and said the Palestinians have to leave. Sounds like, again, idiocracy meets the Omen, which is really what he seems to be aiming at. But the policy has real ramifications. And I don't know, maybe there's a sense of safety in the fact that he can't land on how he would do it. The Russians have rejected outright every policy proposal or peace proposal that Trump has thrown their way entirely. The first one was just a copycat of Biden's. And of course, it was untenable to them because it was reasonable. And since then, it seems like that's where where Vance's whole, there are military things like, which seems to lean towards American troops on the ground, or at least American gear continuing to flow at a higher level. That has to be part of the equation. I don't even know how you explain that statement, right? It's
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, American troops, boots on the ground in Ukraine would be completely unacceptable to the Kremlin. So would Polish. I think they'd balk at the Baltic states, Scandinavian states. We're gonna have to go all the way to like Spanish troops or something. There's a lot. You're right. There's a lot going on, and a lot of push and pull, a lot of miscommunication, a lot of, honest to God, missteps, I think. But there's a lot happening. You're right to point that out. Lots of balls in the air. One of the things that gives me pause for concern is that I'm not a fan of his, but at least I respected him, is that his envoy, Trump's envoy to Russia and Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, a general who understands the region, who spent a lot of time here. He seems to be being increasingly sidelined. And there's this new negotiating team that has no knowledge of this region whatsoever, nor do they have really any, negotiation or war experience. So, that is deeply troubling. He's gathered these guys who are just, they're amateurs. Whereas on the Russian side of things, the delegation that apparently is being organized by the Kremlin is guys with like 50 years of experience in dealing with America. And they're heavy hitters.
Right.
So,
well, that's the big fear with Trump and Putin, is that Putin is a well-trained KGB operative who knows how to manipulate people and was trained to do that. That's his primary gig. That's what it's his primary skill, even as a politician, is manipulation, fear, and control. And Trump is just kind of dopey and easily led around by his ego.
They're serious about this.
Yeah.
The thing is, Moscow and the Kremlin are serious about this, and they're taking it seriously. To whittle it down to, I just want the killing to stop. The simplistic kind of like,
Right.
bumper sticker response. I just want, or I feel emotionally distressed by what is, well, okay, but let's get some guys who know what they're doing. Let's get some
Right.
professionals in there. And yet again, Trump has appointed these guys who are not up to the task. They're amateurs. They really
Right.
are. There's very few people on that team. He's got all sorts of really kind of
Yeah.
they're not
they're
knowledgeable about the region. Yeah,
Right.
they're these guys. They're
right.
more, as is typical for Trump.
Sure.
He's more concerned about their allegiance to him and their obedience to him than he is in their professional capability. Is my take on it. Whereas the Russians are there, and they're going to run. If that team stays the way it is, and he doesn't adjust it, maybe bring back in General Kellogg. I don't know, but if he leaves it the way it is, the Russians are going to run circles around him.
Well, and again, I keep trying to look for the what's in it for us, what's in it for them. Now, I know Trump talks about a good game about I just want the killing to stop. And obviously, the easy answer is Russia started it. They can just leave. Bye. You want a security guarantee? How about this? Make the Ukrainians guarantee that they're not going to kill Russian speakers or something like that, which they weren't anyways. So we're done. Bye. Get out. But the issue is that isn't what he, that might be, it's hard to tell, like I said, because Trump of 2025 is not Trump of 2016. And he's definitely deferential.
He definitely wants re-election. He wants elections. Putin wants elections very, very much because he doesn't want to deal with Zelensky. He wants Zelensky out. And
he thinks he can replace him with somebody who's a little more passive or whatever. Why? I don't know why that's necessarily a belief, though, too. That's the interesting thing. Somebody could run on, I want to end this war by finishing it, and we're going to work with our European partners, and I've got a better strategy for joining them in, and then instead of just relying on America to have our back all the time, it's time we grow up and become a powerhouse in Ukraine. You get a strong man in there who's who believes in Ukrainian sovereignty. He could go harder in the second round of this than Zelensky could. So it's not a guarantee.
I mean, anybody with even the whiff of pro-Kremlin sentiment or anything in their in their history and on their resume that indicates that they're even remotely pro-Moscow won't even get on the ballot. And this is something. Look, I don't want to overstate the Kremlin's machinations. They're very good. They're better against actually. The Kremlin is better and more effective at the warfare they're conducting against us, which we are losing very badly, than they are against fighting against Ukraine because they don't understand Ukraine. They think they do, but they don't because as an imperial master looking at the subordinate colony, they think that they've influenced things such that we are the same people. Well, they're not. And Ukrainians will, even in an election that is imposed on them by Moscow as part of the negotiated peace, which Trump will just blindly say, okay, sure, as long as it all stops and I get the Nobel Peace Prize, there will still be if the election were to happen, it's not like they're suddenly going to get a president who's going to be like, bygones are bygone, let's be friends with Moscow again.
Right. Yeah.
No. The anger here. And one more quick point I'll make about this is that there's another thing that Moscow doesn't understand, but I don't think DC or even Brussels understands that and I've been saying it. How long have I been saying this, Hal, to you on this program? We need to understand that what happened in Maidan and what has happened subsequently during this full-scale invasion is a monumental shift in the mentality of Ukrainians. They are no longer a colony. Okay. Right. Colonialism is dead in Ukraine. This is a sovereign state that is going to beat its own path. Okay. They will write their future and they are determined to do it. They are not just going to swap one imperial master in Moscow for one in DC or Brussels. And the sooner we realize that, the better, because I do think that there is a very real possibility that if they ice out Ukraine, which is That's also a very real possibility, that when they then come to not just Zelensky, but the Ukrainian people and say, this is the peace plan that we propose, and the Ukrainian people go, no, no, that's not good enough. What do we do then? What does Trump do then?
Well,
what does Putin do then?
It's an excellent point. And if in the case that, let's say there is some sort of negotiated plan that puts forward, and then they insist on elections, and the elections actually are more sort of pro-Ukrainian jingoistic because they see this as a capitulation or a force. And they're like, nope, as a matter of fact, we want somebody stronger in there who's going to take back our land. Somebody could run on, we can do this ourselves with our European partners. And the idea that Russia's ever going to do this again is, we're going to put a stop to this. And you could argue that if Russia gets what it wants in these negotiations before there's an election, could drive the elections in another direction so that it makes it even harder for them in the future and starts this stuff up, there's no reason why the way the Russians kind of salami sliced their way into Ukraine, that Ukraine couldn't salami slice their way into the Donbass with as much force over time, and with the lack of military support that Russia would have and the attention of the world on their forces inside the Donbass and those areas. Because, you could just send, let's say they declare peace in this whatever nonsense version of Trump's version of things, or whatever. And you're like, fine, okay, busloads of Ukrainians are going to go down to Crimea and just hang out. They're not military people. They're just Ukrainian citizens. And since it's a territory, we should be able to go there. And tell you what, we get to vacation there and you can have Kursk back or something. Like, again, does Ukraine get to keep Kursk? Like, this is the idea that they think this is going to be like redlined out is just stupid. We got to take a break, though.
100 days, my patootie.
Yeah, it's silly. It's an absurd notion. And again, like everything Trump touches, it will get worse, because he doesn't know what he's doing. We'll be back right after this. It's the HAL Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Johnny Million has a live stream, It's called It's Johnny Million on YouTube and Twitch.
I'll tell you one thing that will happen if that's the way it goes down is Ukrainians will not forget the betrayal. All our goodwill, just right out the window.
Well, and again, I don't know. Like, and again, we'll see what the kind of feeling is. Because again,
back in 10.
Thank you. The vast majority of the American people support Ukraine or whatever, even with Trump undercutting us. And I think the Ukrainians should understand after Yanukovych what it's like to be kind of have your political leg swept by by Putin. In that regard.
Locked into the HAL Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
In relation to what we were talking about, Zelensky has invited Keith Kellogg, Trump's envoy to Ukraine, to visit the military front line to see the damage. Whether he will go, we will see. I kind of don't doubt that he would. But Zelensky said, and I quote, "The American side needs to understand the realities, to understand and see for themselves." And I think that's wise on his part. I also think that he should invite Hegseth. I think he should make him go. I think he should also invite Hegseth to Bucha. I think he should invite Hegseth to, the reclaimed, battle areas and go, this was all fine up until a couple of years ago because these guys decided, apropos of nothing, to destroy this town. Make them face it, because it's hard. One of the reasons why Trump, I think, has been able to dance around this stuff is he's never been. Biden went. And Trump doesn't want to go specifically. Now, meanwhile, Lindsey Graham said Russia will be torn apart by sanctions and Ukraine will be in NATO. This was his speech in Munich as a senator. Now, take what you will, because he's a senator and he's not in the administration, but senators have longer terms than the president does. And Miss Lindsay's going to be in there for quite some time. He goes, the story of Russia's war against Ukraine, President Trump will not allow the story of Russia's war against Ukraine to end badly. He called on NATO member countries to increase pressure on Russia, at the same time threatened to admit Ukraine into the alliance if Vladimir Putin initiates a new invasion. So that would be what he put in there. He goes, believes any potential peace deal must include measures to prevent Putin from invading again. That's got to be troops on the ground, whether they're NATO
it's
troops or
tough.
whether they're, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only way you do it.
Yeah, or put in guarantees that if they break the truce, that in immediate no-fly zone or X, Y, or Z. The Ukrainians.
He says specifically, I want Putin to know if he does this again, Ukraine will immediately join NATO. And if there's a new invasion, there will not only be sanctions or other troubles, and our troops will be in Ukraine. The idea is that if we cannot accept them in NATO, then Putin should know if he tries to invade again, then Ukraine will immediately join NATO. That's not soft language. Now, Graham's been...
but that's Miss Lindsay. That's Miss Lindsay.
I agree.
He can't back that up. He can't back that up.
Well, he can with the Senate because, again, he's there as part of that delegation. He's not just him, and there's a reason they send him. There's a reason Thune continues to send him like McConnell did, because the Senate in the United States, whether they play footsie with Trump's like Ukraine nonsense at all, which they don't seem to do very often, the reality is the funding goes through committee and it gets signed off on, even when it's not even close. So whatever Rand Paul throws around.
What Lindsay is suggesting is in essence an Article 5 for Ukraine without being in NATO.
Right.
I think that's going to be a very big pill to swallow, because if you are saying that instantly American boys are going to be fighting on Donbass. Let me go back quickly though to what you're saying, where Kellogg is Zelensky is suggesting Kellogg go to the front lines, and I agree with you. I think Hegseth should as well, but I think they should go there for a variety of reasons, not just to see the damage that's been done and the suffering that happens out there. Because I've been to the front lines, okay? I've been out there, and I've seen there's another reason that Kellogg and Hegseth should go out there, and that is to see the morale, competency, the
skill,
the skill, the defense, the depth of defense that they have, the strategic depth that they have in their defensive lines out in Donbass. And just how much the Ukrainians will make Russians pay for every inch that they try and take. And also to show that the will of the armed forces of Ukraine is still very much in this fight. They're frustrated. They're exhausted. They have criticisms. There's all sorts of stuff. And look, I'll watch my language here as we're on the radio. But, anybody who's been in the armed forces, America included, it is a soldier's want to complain, shall we say. I have never been with a unit of any kind of military where there haven't been whingers. And they have every right to do. It's a terrible job. Soldiering is really, really difficult. So people complain, including Ukrainians. But at the end of the day, soldiers who are fighting on the front line tend to be the ones who are most vocal about not accepting anything short than a lasting peace. Why? Because they've had their friends die. Okay? People have shed their blood, stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and they've died. And it has to mean something. So I see this all the time in Kiev when guys come back off the front lines and they see they kind of readapt into normal or more normal, because we still get shot at all the time and we get drones and missiles. But, when they come and they talk to guys who are still working in their civilian gigs, there is this it's the civilians who are off the line, who are exhausted by all this, who want it to just stop no matter what. Right. And there is that sentiment here. But the guys who come off the front line, as hard as it is and as exhausted as they are, it has to count for something. And so you see that dichotomy in Ukraine, and I'd love to see Keith Kellogg see that, and as well Hegseth.
Pete Hegseth, I agree.
These soldiers are dead set on pushing Russian off every single square mile of their land.
I think that dare needs to be extended to Hegseth, and I would argue to Vance.
Here.
Yeah, and And I'm happy to do it, but I think people with a slightly larger reach in the mainstream media should start asking, especially the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world, should start asking the question, why won't they, and what are they afraid of, and why not, and what are they afraid they'll see and realize. Also in the Lindsey Graham's stuff, he said, and I quote, "If we arm Ukraine and sign an agreement on rare earth metals, Putin will lose." Well, we just signed the agreement on rare earth metals. And here's my question. How do you sign an agreement with a country on rare earth metals and then let Russia take that land? How do you put American businesses, have them come in, help extract those things, much like Exxon and these other guys used to work with Russia? How do you do that with rare earth minerals in Ukraine? Without U.S. staff, U.S. business people, U.S. security forces, whether they're soldiers or not. I mean, if Exxon has their own private contractors, they hire the, She and Blackwater types to protect their facilities and that kind of stuff. How do you not put them there? And if you do, and Russia attacks, what do you do when they kill Americans that are just there, making this deal come through? This deal that allegedly Trump thinks is crucial to American superiority in AI and technology in the future. Like that's one of the big questions, because even if there's no way we don't continue to arm Ukraine if we sign this rare earth minerals thing and show up to actually collect, take part in the extraction process.
Yeah, and no matter what happens, that is still going to be a very tense line. And you're going to be within shooting distance of
right
Russia. So that comes into play as well. Look, let's step back here and look at the entire thing. What troubles me, doesn't trouble me most because I'm not surprised by it, but it gives me pause for concern, I suppose, is that they don't have a plan. They don't know what they're doing. They're all over the place. The Trump team and the negotiating team. I mean, they're just the faux pas in Munich and the really terrible messaging that came in Munich. The fact that the Hegseth, whether he did it after a couple of scotches or whether he was just loosey goosey and made those comments that he made, which cedes a position in a negotiation you don't. And I'm glad that this is getting traction, by the way, is the fact that Hegseth came out there and basically said, I'm going to give you everything you want. Now let's negotiate. And that's not how you negotiate. You don't start with saying, I'll give you what you want. Because that's Putin's entire shopping list.
Yeah.
So you don't start a negotiation that way. So it just, what bothers me, what I think we have to keep an eye on and what we need to be very sober-eyed about is do they know what they're doing? Do they have adults in the room who have experience, who know how to do these kinds of things, who know Putin, who know the Russians, who know the lay of the land, know Ukraine, all the rest of it? Or are we going to send these, amateurs, and are we going to just be distracted by every little shiny object that comes down the road? Because this is going to be a long process. This is not going to be resolved very soon. And also, I hope that what else is gathering traction in the West, and in particular in America, is the idea you can't do this without Ukrainians being involved, because they won't agree to it.
Yeah, of course not. Why would? And again, this is exactly maybe Trump's playbook with Afghanistan. Release 5,000 fighters before the extraction begins, and don't involve the government of the country that you're allegedly aligned with. Right. This is why Trump is responsible for the failure in Afghanistan and the difficulties we had getting out, was because he set it all in motion. He was always like, why did you take the soldiers out last? I don't know. Same reason you don't release 5,000 prisoners first before you've even gotten your civilian staff out, you lunatic. So the idea that this is going to be, a replay of that seems silly. And also, I don't think Trump has the stomach or interest. I think he likes to be seen as a peacemaker, like I said. But again, his debt. Our biggest concern for a long time, beyond blackmail, was his debt to Russia. Obviously, through Deutsche Bank, Russia paid a lot of his bills for a very long time. That's why, and Mark Burnett helped make that happen. So Mark Burnett got a cushy job being the London envoy or what have you. But Trump's little meme coin made him more money than he owes anybody. Like, he can pay off all of his debts with his stupid little meme coin. His Trump Media Group is failing. Its stock dropped a bunch. They posted a huge loss. They've given away a bunch of stock options to the employees instead of pay, all kinds of stuff. It continues to cadaver because he doesn't care about it anymore. Truth Social doesn't cost anything to run. It's a Mastodon site, and he's making money on these memes. Well, if he makes that money on these memes, he's not beholden to anybody anymore. He is truly the billionaire everybody said. I don't need any money. I've got plenty of money, which was a lie in 2016. Now it's kind of true. And the only person, what happens when you're free of the shackles of debt? Your feeling about that isn't like you're mad at the people who you didn't have the debt. You now have like a vengeful thought about the people who used to hang your debt over your head. And there's an element to that that's possible with Russia if he even cares. I feel like he has outsourced this to the Republicans, and he wants to be the delegator in chief. So he is just pointing people and saying, "You came highly respected. Fix this. Fulfill my promise, whether it works or not." I don't think he has a real say in this at all. He might have a real meeting with Putin, but God knows, what's going to come of it.
And the other quickly, the other thing is that even if he is not financially burdened to Vladimir Putin, Putin knows where all the bodies are buried, figuratively and literally, when it comes to Trump and his machinations. You know what's a great way to get rid of a guy who knows where all your dirty laundry is stored? Make sure that he gets overthrown and thrown into a ditch. And his little tough guy circle that he has with him will go with him as well. So if you want to silence people who know where you were doing stuff wrong, and you were in bed with the Russians, one great way to do that is to make sure that they get overthrown. And a defeat in Ukraine, it would be a good way of doing that. Look, I'm just postulating here at this point, but it's still worth considering because, as we have discussed this entire 45 minutes here on the show, there's lots of balls in the air, and lots of things are going on, and this is not going to be easy, and it's not going to be clean. It's going to be messy and difficult.
Agreed. And Germany has just sent. Hold on. I have to look this up. How many? Because I don't want to overstate it. How many? 6,000 HX-2 drones to Ukraine. Right. These are not the airplane style drones. These are missile shaped drones that are AI autonomous. This is a huge step forward in warfare on the planet. And they sent them
and the Mirages. 6,000 of them. And Ukraine itself has now reached capacity where they are doing 40% of their own domestic military production is happening here in Ukraine. 4 more in 2025, 2026, 4 more German Rheinmetall, their defense contractors. They're building 4 huge factories here. They are going to get to,
That's
Germany is stepping up. France is stepping up. These new Mirages that they got, it's not gone unnoticed that the Mirages can carry the French cruise missiles.
And you could argue that the hardcore waffling by the Trump administration might accidentally be the best thing that's ever happened to Ukraine, because everybody will, again, pick up the slack and they won't have the same limitations that were put on because it dragged it out longer than it probably should have. We got to take a break. We'll be back after this. I'm sure there's some questions that Johnny Million has for you, so we'll get those after the break. Yeah, this thing.
I got to get a plug in as well. Yeah, these things with the 4-wing thing.
Yeah. These they are AI powered autonomous target seeking missile drones.
I hear from soldiers who are out on the front lines, by the way, that Russia right now, their rate of fire of artillery is down to a trickle. Something's going on in Russia. There's a supply chain problem, or perhaps they're holding it in reserve. We don't know. All I can say is what I'm hearing from Ukrainians and other foreign nationals who are fighting on the front lines. There's something up on the other side of the line that the Russians are not firing off artillery rounds like they used to, and it's being taken as a good sign on the front lines. But let's hope they're not. There's hope it's not some sort of tactic.
Right. I mean,
Coming
again,
back in 10.
Thank you. They've been the story about them running low on materials and having to get it from North Korea and Iran points to the fact that it probably is
I am happy, you are happy. Let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I'll bet you like cereal.
Yay!
So,
Hooray!
On the Ed show you're doing on tomorrow.
Yep.
Who's your guest on that, and what are you going to be talking about?
Comes out tomorrow, 8 p.m. Local time here in Kiev. I think that's 10 a.m. Pacific. We haven't done kind of more hard news topical stuff in the past. With Trump coming in, we're going to transition to start maybe doing a little bit more of that. This week is a conversation with a former USAID contractor who's got decades of contracts and cooperation with USAID. He lives here in Ukraine, down in Odessa. So we get a chance to talk about what it means that Trump is trying to break up USAID and demolish it, and what that means for Ukraine and what that means for U.S. soft power. It's a good conversation. It's topical, and I think what is happening to USAID is something we need to really take a close eye on, because I've spent decades as well traveling the world as a foreign correspondent for American news networks, and I have run into USAID time and time again. I have seen, warts and all, how they operate, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. But at the end of the day, I do believe that USAID does more good than bad, and the narrative that they are this draw on our economy is nonsensical, and it's not real. Losing soft power is not in our benefit. We need to really consider what he is doing to USAID.
Agreed.
And debunk some of the lies. So
the story.
Check it out. 8 p.m. Kiev time on my channel, Philip Ittner. It's runs about an hour, so check it out.
Excellent, cool, thanks. And then Johnny, let's grab some questions because I know the chat have some.
Sure, I've got one here from 56 Nick Rich. What is Phil's take on the Chernobyl attack?
Yeah, a lot of people have, of course, gone directly to a false flag or some sort of conspiracy that Kiev did it to itself. To coincide with the Munich security conference. Look, is that possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. Ukraine does not attack its own facilities. It does, and you also don't do that to a nuclear, biological, chemical site. It would. I mean, even if they knew exactly what it was they were doing, and that the warhead that they were using wouldn't penetrate the sarcophagus, you still don't do it. And it's a complete lack of understanding of this country and its mentality and its armed forces mentality. Why waste? Why? Look, it's possible. Sure, it's possible, but I think it's much more possible that it was the Russians. And people say, well, why would they do that? And why would the Russians do it? Well, the Russians bomb anything, everything, all the time. Maybe to scare, the Russian motivation, maybe to scare the international community into recognizing that intervention here and military force here comes with some grave consequences. Look at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant.
Right.
I don't know. All of that is to say, I don't know. I tend to err on the side of believing the Ukrainians because false flags are very dangerous things, especially when you're trying to keep national cohesion. I mean, if that gets out, if it were leaked, or if somehow it would.
Yeah, the downside is so much higher than the upside. It's a little silly.
Your risk reward ratio.
But in terms of Russia and the Munich conference, they did not actually have like Russian delegates didn't actually get visas or something along that. They weren't accredited at the actual Munich conference, anyways, and so it looks like something they did out of petulance, I would argue, right? So.
Yeah.
Let's grab another
question. That would be their
MO. Yeah. Johnny?
All right, cool. I've got one from Seattle, Susie Q. Please ask Phil if he thinks Zelensky is in physical danger from Putin.
Always, every single day. Yeah. We know that there have been several assassination attempts on his life. And they're, not only are they, but you look, not only are they physically, threatening Zelensky and, with assassination, but also there's a political aspect that we are seeing, again, with this discussion of there needs to be elections coming up. They are definitely trying to undermine Zelensky.
Sure.
And you are seeing an effect here because people are exhausted. And look, in normal times, check out our interview that we did on the Edge with the member of the parliament here, Kira Rudik, who basically said to me, we have put our differences aside for now, but the second politics start up again, we're going to be at one another's throats. Ukrainian politics are very cutthroat. So they might be, yes, of course, they're always trying to kill Zelensky, and his threat to his physical person is very real and palpable. But in addition to that, they're trying to undermine support for him domestically within Ukraine, which is finding some traction, but not a lot. And then, of course, internationally as well. So, yeah, the Russians they got a crosshairs on Zelensky in one way or another. Make no mistake.
Yeah, and I will say, in terms of the Vance met with Zelensky at the Munich conference or around it, and one of the things that people are giving him a lot of crap for, and rightly so, I would argue, but in line with his message about free speech and all that kind of stuff, where he seems kind of like towing the line for the AFP or other folks, is that you can't say that and then argue for Russia in any front, because Russia doesn't have any of those rights, any of those privileges, doesn't have a society that supports that, doesn't have a legal system that supports that. So it flies in the face of it. And every European country is like, wait a minute, you're going to tell us how to live, but you want us to sidle up to these guys? You want to prefer the system that Ukrainians are trying to, Russia's system over the one that the Ukrainians are trying to build and rebuild after what Russia did to their system? Forget it. Like it becomes a self-snaring trap. So we shall see. Let's grab another question.
Yeah, as flawed as Ukraine's democracy and elections are, how many presidents have there been since the dissolution of the USSR, and how many presidents have there been in the Russian Federation? Something to consider. Anyhow,
exactly. Question. Yeah, we got time for maybe one more.
I think this is from Andrea. Does Phil get money directly or indirectly from NED or USAID to help you in Ukraine?
No, I take no money from anybody. It's all out of my own pocket.
So all the more reason to support the show and subscribe to his channel and all that kind of stuff, and help out that way. In the book, it doesn't take, and subscribing is free.
If nothing else for the team, if nothing else for the team that I have, I don't need it myself. But I'd love to break even on things like rent and utilities, but also to pay my team.
Right.
So it's not for me, for them.
Yep.
Excellent. I've got this question from Ed's
4 seconds
Tech.
or 4 minutes. We got it.
Yeah. 4 seconds. Can you ask Philip if artillery parity has occurred with Russia and Ukraine due to knocking Russian refineries offline?
Well, I don't know if it's refineries that are doing it. Might be their munition stockpiles and their war factories. But as I mentioned earlier, there does seem to be something going on the front line, because the Russians are not responding to Ukrainian artillery strikes as much as they used to. There was a time where Ukraine would fire one shell and then a barrage would come back from the Russian side. That is no longer happening, nor are the Russians being aggressive in terms of offensive artillery capability. Are they holding it? Are they, stockpiling it and going to use it in some sort of offensive down the road? We don't know. But as I say, most Ukrainian soldiers, the guys on the front lines, are saying we're taking this as a good sign that they're running out of artillery.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, Zelensky has at the Munich conference has called for what he calls an army of Europe, whether it's NATO or not. The idea is that he goes, let's be clear, we cannot rule out the possibility that America may refuse to cooperate with Europe on issues that threaten it. At the Munich Security Conference, and called for a, quote, army of Europe, which would be effectively NATO in that regard. By the way, Russia's killed and wounded number went up by 1,180 last night and is at 856,660 right now. Almost, we're headed towards 900,000. I would say it's what do you think, a month and a half away from a million or
Probably.
so, depending on the rate.
Million.
Yeah.
Yep. As estimated.
Yep, go ahead, John. Oh, well, we're actually at the end of the show, so I don't know that we have time for another one. Yeah, so I want to thank everybody for listening. Nope, definitely not. Not in this next second. So I want to remind everybody, On the Edge, tomorrow's show, check it out. Johnny Million, it's Johnny Million on Twitch and YouTube, and I live stream at infotainmentwars.com. That'll take you to the YouTube page where you should subscribe and support the show, patreon.com/HalSparks, and we will see you next week. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chicago.
Excellent.
Thank you, Chicago.
Appreciate it.
All right, Mrs. Million has been wrangling the cats, so I need to.
And you're getting yelled at.
Jump in and help her out.
All right, well, go take care of that, and I will see you guys later on. Thanks, Phil, and I will see you Wednesday.
Right,
yeah.
Talk to you on Wednesday. Yep.
Excellent. All right.
Unless
Cheers.
something weird happens, but yep.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. Bye. There he goes. Excellent. And chat room, I should say hi to you guys. I almost pushed the wrong button there. Look out, that would have been terrible. Hi, chat room. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate the support. Thanks to Angela. There's a video of Hegseth giving a speech to the security conference. In the middle of it, reaching for a shot of booze and drinking it. That can't possibly be real. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Let's see. Let's see. Is it booze, though, or is it just a beverage? Hold on. Hegseth drinking at I don't know. Was it Munich? Yeah. Hegseth slammed for his comments about Ukraine. Republican Senator Hegseth's rookie mistake. I guess at the Munich conference? Is that where it was, you think? No, okay. There's no evidence that Hegseth was drinking at Munich. A video that appeared on TikTok was created by filming a TV screen. The liquid in Hegseth's glass appeared to be yellowish brown due to some kind of sheen. However, Hegseth did say he would stop drinking. So this would be the video. It's water. Did a video show? Okay, the fact check says it's water. On this one, I don't know if we got to shake off those nerves. Okay, did a video show Defense Secretary Hegseth drink what appears to be bourbon at a NATO conference? No, that's not true. The video appeared on a TikTok. Appears to be created by using a phone to film a TV screen with some kind of sheen, made the liquid in Hegseth glass appear yellowish brown. Clear video directly from Associated Press shows the liquid was clear as water. Okay, cool. So nope. Again, here's the thing. I'm certainly. I don't think him drinking on the job would get him pounded from the position, and so it wouldn't make me feel better to find out that he was drinking on the job. Strip Musk Michael says strip Musk of USA citizenship and deport Musk. Well, I think there'd be an action, certainly. The legality of it would be the difficult part. Lady Beatrice, hi, Lady Beatrice. We're surrounded by idiots. Phil, quite literally, look at who runs things. There you go. Thank you for that. And then Berkeley Dowd, thank you. Happy Saturday to you as well. And Robert Brunswick, thank you. Love you too. Appreciate it. And oh, I wanted to do something. See if I can get this to work. Hold on. I think this works. Copy. And then we'll go down here. I'm going to fix something real quick. This will be fun. Should I put it on there? Yeah. I'll put it on here. So we'll go to the chat room and the news thing and put it in sources. We'll add, pardon me, the browser source window will pop up for a second while I fix something. There we go. Put this in here. I'll put this in here. And paste that in there. And then I think it should be like width 800 and this by 200, something like that. Sure. Okay. And I think, let's see if I can make this happen. If I take one of these and just, did it work? Nope. Rats. Try to do this. I guess not. Okay, I need another link. Sorry, I was trying to put the highlighted chat thing on here, but it's not working right now. So I will go fix that because it is Saturday and you are so stupid, OBS, for being stupid. All right, love you guys. I will see you on Monday for sure. Apparently Tuesday there is a big interview with Elon Musk and Trump on Hannity at the same time. So, and you know me, I love a ventriloquist dummy show, so I'm excited about that. If I can cover it live, I will. If not, I will cover it on Wednesday, clearly. So, anyways, in the meantime, like, subscribe, share the show, etc., 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 etc. All right, and I need to figure out how to put chapter headings in this thing. Why are you moving it around? Okay. Anyways, much love. Be well. Oh, and I have to do this thing too. Which one this time? I think this one. Happy Saturday, everybody.